Noted. Now, Mr. President, as you know, I've been coming down to the Senate pretty much every week for months after months after months to highlight somebody in my state who we call the Alaskan of the week, somebody who does something important either for their community or the state or the country, and oftentimes they don't get a lot of recognition. So the purpose of this is to come down and say, look at what these people are doing for Alaska, for America, for their community. And you know, Mr. President, my state is known for many things: our physical beauty, incredible hunting and fishing, adventuresome spirit, size. You don't want me going there. I have a difficult conversation with my colleagues from Texas on occasion about the different sizes of our respective states, but I won't go into details there. These are all things that we have in Alaskan spades, but the thing that really makes us such a great place to live is our people. Strong, resilient, kind people all across our state who look out for each other, often in harsh weather conditions. And Mr. President, we're a patriotic state. Now, I know everybody here claims that, and that's great. We all are. Nowhere is the spirit of sacrifice and patriotism more apparent than in our veterans across the state. In Alaska, in Missouri, the presiding officer's state. We are all celebrating that, and we're going to celebrate that this weekend going home for Veterans Day. Now, in Alaska, we like to talk about our veterans. We also like to talk about the fact that we have more veterans per capita than any other state in the country. So a very patriotic place, full of service. In every city, village, every community across Alaska, you will find proud veterans, many of them working tirelessly together to make sure they get the help and support that our veterans need. A lot of times that happens with the older vets, Vietnam-era vets, coming to make sure the newer vets get the help they need. So to all of them, I salute your service, your sacrifice. Thank you so much for all you've done and continue to do for our country. Happy Veterans Day to all of Alaska's veterans. I can't wait to get home to celebrate in Fairbanks and Anchorage this weekend. Now, Mr. President, it's not just Veterans Day that's approaching in Alaska this month. We're also celebrating Alaska Native Heritage Month, where there's much to celebrate. In my state, almost 20% of the population of our great state are Alaska Natives. And this is a group of people, generation after generation, what I call have a special patriotism. A special patriotism. What do I mean by that? Well, Alaska Natives serve at higher rates in the military, just like lower 48 Native Americans, higher rates in the military than any other ethnic group in the country. And this has been going on for generations. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, Iraq, Afghanistan. And, you know, when you think about it, it's special because let's face it, in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, even sometimes, unfortunately, today, the federal government has not always treated Alaska Native people well. And yet, generation after generation, off to the front to fight for this country. It is truly a special kind of patriotism and a unique tribute to the Alaska Native heritage that we're celebrating this month. So I thought it was fitting today, Mr. President, to name as our Alaskan of the Week, to make it a collective for all Alaska Natives who have served their country in the military, and it's thousands, to make them collectively the Alaskans of the Week as we look to celebrate Veterans Day. Now, Mr. President, a little bit of history, and I know you know this, but a lot of Americans don't. During World War II, Alaska was the only state in the Union to be invaded and occupied by the Japanese. invaded and occupied. So we had big military battles in the Aleutian Island chain of Alaska to throw off the invaders of our American territory. Thousands of Alaska Natives volunteered to protect their homeland and to defend their country overseas. Across the state, whether they were in the Alaska Territorial Guard, warriors overseas, code talkers who served with the Marines and others, they were as old as 80 and as young as 12. Now, this is a great story. It shows the warrior ethic. Alaska Native women, after the outbreak of World War II, even originally enrolled in the Alaska Territorial Guard before they realized that women weren't allowed to enroll. And in fact, the best sharpshooter in Alaska's Territorial Guard was a woman named Laura Belts Wright of Haycock, Alaska. So here's how the late, great Jerome Trigg, an Alaska Native, a Marine, put it in 1968, at the height of the Vietnam War, when he was testifying in front of the United States Congress on a very important piece of legislation called the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. He was the president of the Arctic Native Brotherhood, and as I mentioned, a proud Marine. In front of a bunch of senators, he stated as follows: "We have showed our patriotism as proudly as any Americans on earth. We have answered the call of duty with pride in serving our country. We answered the call in World War II 100%. Every man in every village, old and young, volunteered with the Alaska National Guard." And remember, this was in 1968 he was testifying. Then he said, "I have never heard of an Alaska Native burning the draft card or burning our nation's flag. We are patriots." Now, Mr. President, that service, as I mentioned, didn't end after World War II. Alaska Natives have served in every conflict, the Korean War, and in droves during the Vietnam War. I was honored to be in Southeast Alaska this past summer in a native village called Hoonah. Beautiful place. And there was a documentary that I saw recently, documented the classes in 1968, 1969 in that small native village in a film called Hunting in Wartime. And it was about how almost every single male high school student in Hoonah, everyone went to go fight in Vietnam. Incredible. Special patriotism. Mr. President, let me tell you a quick, more up-to-date story. We had the Secretary of Interior, Ryan Zinke, combat vet, Navy SEAL, heroic man himself, come to Alaska this summer, and I asked him to come meet with a bunch of Alaska Native veterans, particularly our Vietnam veterans, who had an issue that the Department of Interior has been working on for years, and I wanted him to hear about it firsthand. It was a very touching meeting. Some in the room talked about how it was like to be in their villages, places they'd never left when they were 17 and 18 and 19. And then a few days later, in a steamy jungle, thousands and thousands of miles away in Vietnam. Some talked about what it was like coming back and not feeling that they had the support of their country. Others talked about the difficulty of readjusting to life back in Alaska after their service in Vietnam, and some of the discrimination that they received when they came back home. But even though they went through this hardship, even though they went through some of these very difficult times in the late 60s and early 70s, not one of them said that they had made a mistake in serving their country. They were proud, patriotic warriors, and to this day, that's what they were. That's what they are. Secretary Zinke said after he left that meeting, he began it as their Secretary of Interior. He left as a brother in arms. So, Mr. President, I'm so honored to be able to serve these great Alaskans and to celebrate them is our Alaskans of the Week. Just like I know everybody in America is going to be proud to go home and celebrate with their veterans. So once again, to our Alaska Native veterans, thank you for all you've done for our country, and thank you for being our Alaskans of the Week. Mr. President, I ask that my following remarks